You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 308th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 965th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of September 14th, 2023. I'm your host, the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call, how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion. Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment, somewhat easy. It occurred last weekend when Indiana hosted official visits for top 15 prospects, Liam McNeely, Derek Queen, plus top 60 guard Curtis Givens, all from Mount Verde. Coach Woodson has talked about getting a, quote, seat at the table with the top recruits in the country. Well, the table was set this weekend and the guests showed up. All the news about these visits have been nothing but incredible and awesome. Indiana really did what they had to and beyond to show these young men why they should be Indiana Hoosiers. So a huge weekend it was. There are great vibes coming out of the visit, but there are no commitments yet, and the deal is not done until they decide to come to Indiana. And so there lies the last piece of the puzzle for Coach Woodson and his staff. The table was set, the work was done, the guests showed up. Now the deals need to be closed. Indiana will know soon if their efforts paid off. Let's hope we see these guys in the cream and crimson soon, playing for our Indiana Hoosiers. Okay, now let me introduce my co-host this week. Andy is off this week, currently pacing around the living room and yelling at the officials while watching his Eagles go down 7-3 to the Minnesota Vikings early on Thursday Night Football. Jared will be here shortly. He had an ice cream social and book fair at his daughter's school. Now he's putting his son to bed. He'll be here for the second section, and we'll have a special guest joining us as well in segment 2. But first, here with me now is a senior writer for the Big Lead. He claims his ears are still ringing from Marco Killingsworth's dunk, and he is threatening to hold out come November if we don't add a clause to his Assembly Call contract that pays him by the interruption.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
Ryan, my friend, what's your rant or what's on your mind this week?
Well, I have to say my intros are getting a little bit more elaborate. I don't know how Jared writes these, or does he just like shut the show off Thursday night, start writing now for next week, and just finish it before he goes on air?
I should preview them because I just read them, and all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, am I saying that, or does the listening audience think that?"
Really,
that coach? No, those are all Jared.
I think everybody knows that's Jared's voice. You're just regurgitating it.
Yeah.
If they know anything about us, they know that. No, I mean, basically where we're at right now with Indiana basketball is now we wait. And Indiana has, I was on podcast On the Brink with Alex Bozich this week talking about it, and Indiana's put itself in a very risky position, which is kind of going all in on all these big recruits. And when you do that, the chances that you get any of them go down considerably, because the bigger the recruit, the more schools are recruiting them, and the harder it becomes. And while there are a lot of positive things coming out about that the recruiting weekend, it's going to be tough to land any of those guys. Difficult, regardless of where they stand now. It's going to be difficult, and you put yourself in to a position where if you miss on some of these big targets, you're going to be the one left, without a chair when the music stops, because they have gone all in on these guys. And they've got to land. I mean, if they don't land any of them, it's really a problem. And it kind of starts to say something about the program's ability to recruit in these long recruitments, and ability not only to recruit, but to build the relationships that can withstand a long recruitment. So I would say this is really huge for the program, not only because you need to get good players, but also as a message that, hey, we're getting better at this. Because they've done great in short recruitments. They've done great in the transfer portal, but high school recruiting is the backbone of your program, and you have to be able to land the big names if you're going to go after them. And you have to be able to just land guys, fill out your roster too, that have enough upside to be good. So last year they kind of punted on the class a little bit late. They brought in 2 guys, but they could have brought in a much bigger class, and they did not. They decided not to, and to go all in on this year. And we are now in mid-September. They don't have a single commit, which is a risky way to do business. So really, kind of pins and needles until we figure out what the deal is with these recruits. But I think that's kind of where we're at right now with the program is that's the biggest story right now is wait and see.
And we've talked off air and in our text exchange, and I even said it last week. And to clarify, every coach wants the best talent, and coaches are better when they have better talent. But some coaches can manufacture wins and NCAA tournament wins without the top talent, and some coaches just do better with top-end talent. And Coach Woodson is best when he gets these top 15 kids in. He can really do things with those kids. And we saw it last year with the 2 young men who are now in the NBA, in Trace and Hood Shafino. So it's important for what Coach Woodson wants to do from a basketball philosophy to get the very top kids in. He's been at that table, like I said, and now we hope that he can close that. So here's what we're going to talk about this week. We have some Hoosier headlines, and then in segment 2, we have a special guest from our presenting sponsor. Connor from Homefield will be here. Looking forward to talking with him. When I told Amy, my wife, that Connor was going to be on, she just said, oh no, like I'm going to order during the show or something. But we'll have Connor and be able to talk about Homefield Apparel in segment 2, and we have some good questions for Connor and other questions, always as usual, in segment 3. All of that is coming up this week on Assembly Call Radio. But now let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Homefield Apparel, wear one for the team.
This edition of Assembly Call Radio, just like all shows on the Back Home Network, is presented by our friends at Homefield Apparel, where they have the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you'll find anywhere. And it's not just IU. Homefield has something for fans and grads of pretty much every school, with unique vintage logos for all of them. And no matter what you buy, you know it'll be comfortable and the colors will last through many washings. Plus, you're supporting an Indiana-based company that came up through Kelly. What could be better than that? As I said, Mrs. Tonsoni always looks on the front porch to see when the next Homefield order is going to arrive, as my closet is now color-coded with Homefield t-shirts. But if you'd like to do that or just buy Indiana gear, go to homefieldapparel.com. Use our promo code HOME23 for 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, here's some Hoosier headlines that Ryan and I will talk about here in segment 1. As we said before, we're waiting on news of where the recruits from this past weekend will play their college basketball. We saw Bill Self immediately go to Mount Verde on Monday after the young men returned to school. Coach Woodson visiting Boogie Fland and spoke at a school at a basketball clinic. And we're awaiting some visits from Honor Boateng, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, towards the end of September. So the recruiting does not stop for Coach Woodson and his staff. And also on Inside the Hall, and UMHoops put together their annual top 25 players in the Big Ten preseason. IU had 4 mentioned. Kalel Ware was honorable mentioned. Malik was number 25. Mackenzie Mbako was number 22, and X was number 16. That is 4. Indiana ties some other schools with 4 players in that list, although Indiana has the higher 4 of the higher ones, with X being the best at 16. A couple notes that we can talk about. Purdue only landed 2 players in this preseason 25. The top 5 has not been out yet. And some quick team totals. You have Michigan State, Indiana, Maryland, Ohio State with 4. Purdue, Wisconsin, and Iowa with 3, Illinois, Michigan with 2, and a smattering of others with 1 player on the list. Preseason predictions for both the order of teams and the orders of players and All-American lists and such that we will be hearing between now and the start of basketball season, Ryan, are always difficult to do, based a lot on what happened last year. A lot of times it's based on stats or a variety of things, and they're always a point of contention if your guys don't get ranked where you think they should be. But it's hard when you have 14 schools, 16 soon, 18, whatever we end up with the Big Ten, of picking 25. So your thoughts on some of these Hoosier headlines?
Yeah, it's funny. I talked about this with Alex on Inside the Hall. We talked about it last week, and we talked about it a couple times this offseason. And my friends will ask me, like, hey, how's Indiana going to be this year? And my answer is, I don't know. I have no idea. They have so many new pieces. It's Purdue is returning the bulk of its, a huge percentage of its production. So you can kind of game plan out where they're going to be. Michigan State, a big influx of talent. Plus they brought a lot of guys back. You can kind of game out how they'll be. But there are teams that lost half their scoring and they have new guys filling in, and you're anticipating those guys will develop and get better and fill those roles. But you don't know that they will. We don't know how Indiana's going to play. How do they replace Trace Jackson Davis? Doesn't look easy. Malik Renew's great. Can he handle playing 30 minutes a game? We don't know. And so it is really, all of these prediction things are interesting, and they're a great conversation topic. And the reason they do it is for the conversation. But it really doesn't mean anything, because it's all just a guess, a projection of what things are going to look like. So we can have fun with them, but it's not really worth getting upset about them. I know a lot of Hoosier fans, and they see Indiana preseason number 8 in the Big Ten, like, what are you talking about? It's like, hey guys, they might be right. Like, there's no way to know. I don't think Indiana will be that low, but what do I know? I haven't seen this team play anybody, and so I think that maybe by January we'll have a sense of how this is all going to play out, because I think relying too much on November basketball and maybe early December basketball to make a prediction for the season is foolish. So it'll be a while before we know what this team is, how it plays together. There's so many different pieces that are new, that are coming from the outside. Mike Woodson says he wants to change the system. We don't know what that's going to look like. So there's so much up in the air that, it's hard to know. And did you have any problems with where the Indiana guys were ranked?
Not problems. I would use it different. There were some questions. I thought Mbako was a little high from the accolades that we've heard, and was a Duke commit and a top player to come in 22. I think he's going to be one of the better players in the Big Ten. I don't know how much higher I would have placed him, because I didn't go through all of these. I know it happens to be fit, and we don't know his fit yet. And this is why a guy like the Nebraska guard, the sharpshooter, the Tamanaga guy, was listed at 12. He's really good for Nebraska, and he's a tough guard in the Big Ten, and he scores a lot of points. But, again, what's the criteria? Is it contributions to your team? Is it, the athletic ability, those types of things?
I would assume it's how they're going to be as a college basketball play,
right.
like how much production are they going to create for their team? How valuable are they going to be for their team? Because
sometimes
Boo Booey's going to be in the top 5. That guy's not going to play in the NBA. Like,
right.
So it's not about talent. It's about how good they are as a college player. I think that would be my criteria.
I think that's the way I would try to go about it as well. And then you see that a Tamanaga is going to be maybe a top 15 player, because he has to be accounted for on Nebraska's team. Yeah. A little surprised as far as the question you asked about the Indiana guys. Jared's on the crusade for promoting X, right?
Yeah.
On the assembly call Twitter, being a top 10 National Guard. We got into that discussion a little bit, where I don't see it. I think he could be, but coming off an injury and not playing, and some of the ups and downs that he has, I don't find that to be a top 10 guard nationally. I just disagree with him. And so I think he was somewhat fair. He could have moved up a little bit, but we don't know. All these guys for Indiana, we really don't have collegiate proof.
Khalil Ware could be based on talent, he could be a top 10 player in the Big Ten this year. But we just don't know what he's going to look like. With X, I disagree with Jared. I think this was a fair ranking.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think it's a fair ranking. Now, I think he could at the end of the season we could be looking back on it going, oh, that was silly. He should have been top 6, or whatever. But I think this is a fair place to put him after, because I think you can't focus too much on the end of his first season with Indiana. That's where we saw X at his best. But before that, we saw him really struggle and go one game on, one game off for most of the season. Now, I think he's still a good guard. Even at his worst, I think he's a solid Big Ten guard. At his best, he's an all Big Ten type performer, second team maybe. But how often are you going to get his best? We don't know that. Now, he could come out and just have embraced the role of a leader and be a completely different guy this year, consistent, all of that. And that ranking will look silly. But I think given what we've seen, that's a fair place to put him. That's borderline third team all Big Ten for a guy who plays really good defense, but has been known to disappear offensively, really struggled at times the beginning of last year. And I know they were taking the ball out of his hands a little bit with Jalen Hood-Schifino, and that was awkward for him. He wasn't running the show like he had been at the end of the year before when he had so much success. So I do think that, there are some reasons for why he struggled to start last year, but it's not like he was playing at an all Big Ten level last year and got hurt and we missed out on that. I mean, he was up and down. He was struggling. We saw some of the things we saw from the year before. But we know what he can be at his best. And I think that's what Jared is kind of referring to, is expecting him to be at his best all season long. And I'm not sure we can bank on that. I don't think so, actually.
And it gets interesting when you make a list like this stats are stats, right? But someone's stats on Northwestern, their contributions for Northwestern, their numbers might be not as good as someone on Purdue or IU, but they have a big contribution to Northwestern winning and getting to the tournament. Right. That's kind of you have to use context with stats sometimes. Yes, you can compare 11 points per game is better than 10 points per game, but there's, how the person runs in the offense and all of those things. And I think the question of we just don't know what the fit is for these Indiana guys and how they're going to play and how they're going to contribute to winning. We believe that as Indiana fans, but when you put together, the Inside the Hall and the UMHoops, I think those were fair rankings. But Mbako was the one that kind of caught me as being a little bit too high in my initial reading. And we want to welcome Jared Morris to the show.
You mean too low?
Yeah, too low. I mean, too low. Yeah. Correct. I misspoke there. I thought he was, 16. He'd be in there with X. So, Jared, welcome to tonight's show.
Let me just get one.
Hey, I heard there was a bat signal that someone was underselling Xavier Johnson, so I immediately had to swoop in.
We both agreed that we think your crusade for Xavier is a little ambitious.
That's okay. You know what? I heard what you guys said. You're like, hey, he could do this, and we'll look foolish. As I've said, I have questions about what a team led by X looks like, and those are very fair questions. He's got to mature and smooth things out. I understand the questions about him. What I will say in this particular context is, what got me going this week is there was a line, and first off, I want to commend Alex and Dylan. I think they do a really good job with this overall.
Yes.
It's a hard thing to do.
A hard job. Yeah.
Yes, and naturally, people's reactions, no one's going to say like, hey, you had Terrence Shannon ranked in the right place. Everybody's going to, pick it apart. My contention with it is, and the reason why I think people undersell Xavier Johnson is there was a line in there saying, Tyson Walker, A.J. Hoggard, Jameer Young, and Boo Buie are considered the league's top guards. To me, if you want to put Tyson Walker up there at the top, that's fine. He's done the most, has the best numbers, all of that. I do not think you can really make a case that Boo Buie and Jameer Young are on a tier ahead of Xavier Johnson. I don't think the numbers back it up.
I would
watching them.
I would say Bowie, but I would say it would be fair to do that for Bowie because of his production levels, but not Jameer Young.
But his production levels aren't that much greater than X's. That's what I'm saying. You can look. Now, look, if you want to make a qualitative statement that I think he runs his team and is a steadier hand, and I would rather have him than X, that's fine. But what I'm saying is there's an argument between the two. I think,
and also his numbers might be inflated because he's been on bad teams. I mean,
yes.
You don't know. But here's what our thing was about X. And my thing was, it wasn't that X can't be this as good as you're saying he's going to be. It's that for a preseason ranking, I think this is fair because of what we've seen from him the last 2 years. And there's so much up and down and variance in his game. You could get one guy, you could get another during his tenure.
Yeah, no,
Now,
that's true.
And that's what I was saying. I was defending the list more than Xavier Johnson's not better than these other guys. I think that this is where you put him on a preseason list. I think it's completely fair. It's where I expected him to be.
Yeah, like I said, I think Bowie, Jameer Young, Ace Baldwin, who a lot of us aren't that familiar with, but at Penn State and X, I think they're all in a similar tier. And we'll kind of see who ends up better. Yes. One of the issues I do have with the list, I do not think it is defensible at all to have Keisei Tominaga higher than Xavier Johnson. He is a one-trick pony who does his trick very well, but he does not impact the game on two levels. And that's where, like, when you see stuff like that, that's where I think X being below him and the other guys being above him, that to me doesn't compute.
I mean,
I think that's fair.
On a pure talent and like physical level, you understand why he's ranked where he is, in my opinion. But I agree that based on what we've seen, if this list is based on what you've seen and projecting forward, I would agree with you on that one. I think that's fair. I also think sometimes, as somebody who has done lists like this, sometimes you need to get guys from every team sort of in the mix. And I don't know.
Sure.
I think,
put Keisei in the 20s where he deserves to go.
Well,
not at 12.
Jared, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about the 20s. And we talked about this too. Is it stat driven? Is it impact for your team? He has a huge impact for Nebraska, and that's why he's on the list. But the question, you brought up a great point. He's not a two-way impact player. He's an offensive player. He's not an offense and defensive player. And so that's where your argument that X should be higher than him. I would probably agree with that as well. But I would not move X up. I would move the Tominaga guy down to the 20s is what I would probably do.
Yeah. Tominaga's probably going to be, top 3 shooter in the conference this year? I mean,
it was 50, 40, 80 last year. So, the guy's got the numbers.
Maybe number 1. Yeah, he could be.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I say, like, he has this talent level, you're right. He does one thing exceptionally well, and that impacts the game.
What's the most important thing on the court? So credit there.
Exactly. But what I was gonna say is, if we see Xavier Johnson shoot the way he did at the end of his first year at Indiana and not the way he did to start his second season, I don't remember what his numbers were last year, but it just felt like he wasn't hitting the big shots that he had been the year before, more because they were deferring to other guys as well in the new in the way the offense was running.
Yeah, he basically played really well against Xavier and North Carolina and then struggled with his efficiency in the other games.
Yes. And so, but if he is, again, if Xavier Johnson's the guy he was the second half of his first year at Indiana, then this list looks silly. But, you can't, it's all a projection and we don't know.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of the year, analyze their top 25 list.
Do.
Or is it?
They do.
They do.
They had one year they did not have Keita Bates-Diop ranked, and he won Big Ten Player of the Year.
Well, nobody.
Another year. There you go.
That's
right.
I know. That's what I mean. So it's hard to do. And they had Christian Lander on the list in
Honestly,
the 22nd or 23rd.
It's a gutsy thing to do stuff like this, especially for a top 25 instead of being like, here are the top 5 players. But there's a lot of players ranked. You put a lot of honorable mentions in there. You're really putting yourself out there and putting yourself on the line as an expert. So I credit them for doing it. They put a lot of work into it, and it winds up, it's a great piece. You know what I mean? Like it winds up being a really good read and very informative. But you're putting yourself out there, taking some risk, and hat tip to them for doing it.
I appreciate,
but it happens every year
to start conversations.
Exactly,
and they did. And I think I respect them enough that when I look at their lists, my first assumption is, okay, they're probably right. Now let me see if I can defend something that I may think is wrong. But I tend to respect their opinion because I think they research this and follow this as much as anybody.
Yeah.
I think there's also like if I were asked to be part of this, you sometimes overplay your own people that you follow or that you know the best. Like would I downplay Indiana a little bit to be overly fair, right? I think there's some back and forth too. Like where maybe someone wanted Tamanga at 16 and someone wanted him, But the other thing is there's always surprises, whether it's the Big Ten order or whether there's players like we mentioned, the Diop kid out of nowhere just plays incredible basketball. There's going to be someone who's not on this list that really deserves to be in the top 10 or 15 that we don't know about. That's going to just shine for their school in the Big Ten. They're going to be someone who needs to fall out too, that come with a lot of preseason accolades. And with the Big Ten standings too, you had Northwestern pop up to a top 4 protected seed last year. So it is a conversation starter, and it is great to be able to agree and disagree. But I think it is very important what you guys said is that we appreciate that they went and took this risk every year to do that, and it's not easy to get together and put a list, and it's college basketball in September, so it's got to be good.
The two other things I'll say about it, and you may have mentioned this, Indiana is one of 4 teams that has 4 guys on the list if you include the also considered category. So it goes out to 33, 34 players. So one of 4 schools with 4. Ironically, Indiana's the last team to appear on the list, which I do find interesting because I think, look, a lot of these lists come down to criteria. Like, is it based on production? What is it based on? I guarantee you, if you put all the Big Ten coaches together and had them draft players, Indiana would not be the last team to have a player picked.
Correct.
There's no chance that would happen. And so I think when you look at a list like this for Indiana, I do think what it does accurately depict is Indiana has a lot of question marks at the top of its, production lines, right? X has his own question marks. Malik, McKenzie, and Kalel are filled with talent, but have done very little at the college level. That part is fair, but the fact that they're all on the list with so little production is also a sign of their talent and potential. And if anybody has multiple players who can move up from where they're ranked on a list like this, Indiana is one of them because of the talent. And so that's where, as we all said, there's questions. I think this team is going to struggle in November, December, and early January. But the question is, can it all coalesce and can this talent rise to the top? Because if so, you could have 3 or 4 Indiana guys in the top 20. That's not out of the question with the talent that's on the roster. It has to actually happen, and it probably won't. You'll probably see maybe 1 or 2 of those guys jump and 1 or 2 languish. But, it's you have to just kind of get the full context of it there. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think you're right, and the Indiana guys will move up by the end of the year. I just have that feeling.
Hope so, or it's going to be a rough one.
Yeah. Jared, any thoughts on the recruiting weekend? It was obviously the banner moment, and Ryan shared his thoughts on how important it is to get some of these guys to come in. Any thoughts that you have about the big recruiting weekend?
I would just caution everyone, as fun as it is to watch the day-by-day machinations, and you see like today, Trilly Donovan sends out this tweet with his sources telling him who's the leader, and he's got Honor Boateng, Memphis is the leader, Derek Queen, Maryland's the leader, Liam McNeely, Indiana's the leader. And so, people look at that and it's like, oh my God, this is bad. It's pretty well established that Indiana's a leader for Liam McNeely. That's really good. Just because we've been talking about it and assuming it, don't underplay how good of a player he is and how big of a commitment that would be.
Yeah.
And with the other guys, we just have to wait and see. I haven't heard anything from the people I talk to and trust about this stuff that suggests Indiana isn't still in a good position and that this thing isn't still going to turn into a good class. Yeah. We got to see it happen, but I think you just got to be patient. There's ebbs and flows and people say stuff with half information. So just wait and be patient, as hard as that is, and hopefully we have a lot of exciting emergency episodes to come in the next 2 months.
Yeah, how many, Jared? I know. How many guys do you think they need to get in this class? To feel good about it. McNeely's great. Don't get me wrong. Getting McNeely, you feel great, but he can't be the only guy you get.
I think you need to get 2 of McNeely, Queen, Fland, and Boateng to feel good. You need to get 3 to feel really good. And then if you get 4, it's a home run. But I think if you get 2, that's going to be a really good infusion of talent. Now you're going to have to go do some work in the portal and maybe get a late spring guy. But I think at a minimum you have to get 2 for kind of the investment of time and resources to pay off.
I would say 2.
We're going to get an official visit from Boogie Fland. Any feelings on that? I know Coach is out there talking to him right now.
A couple people are confident that he will, but that he will come for a visit. I honestly think, though, with a guy like that, if you're fighting for a visit late, you're probably pretty far back. I know he likes Indiana, but some of these guys like Indiana.
Are they fighting for a visit or just kind of waiting to get the timing right?
I think that's part of it. But what I understand is I think that they're on the list for a visit, but it's not the highest priority for him. he would like to come to India to visit Indiana, and he likes Indiana, and maybe he's here and decides, oh God, this is the place for me. That certainly could happen. But one of the problems right now that Indiana's facing with recruits is people come and visit and like it and like Mike Woodson and like the coaching staff, but a place like Kansas or Duke or whatever offers you, and they have a track record of putting people in the NBA and having success in college and all of that Indiana hasn't had as for a long, established over years and years and years and years. And they did a great job last year getting Jalen Hood-Schifino into the NBA and Trace Jackson Davis. But for the top tier schools, that's an average year. That's just if they only get 2 in the draft, that's actually kind of that's okay. We've done better. Where that was a big deal for Indiana. So I think that's one thing they're facing is just the established track records of some of these other schools putting guys to the next level, especially when you're going against the top tier recruits who are all thinking that way, as opposed to, you grab a guy in the hundreds. He's like, well, I want a good education. I also want this. I also want this. I might be there for 3 years. It's where I'm comfortable. So I think that's something they're running into a lot of. Makes sense.
Woodson's assistants told him this is going to be an uphill climb to do it. And he said, let's take the climb. And I appreciate the boldness.
I appreciate the
let's
effort.
see if they can land them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, coming up on Assembly Call Radio, we have a special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, the founder of Homefield Apparel. Our presenting sponsor, Connor Hitchcock, is here. We'll talk IU sports and building an apparel behemoth with him next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call.
Come on, man. You got to know we're going to use all the flowery adjectives and stuff. You're the presenting sponsor when you come on the show. You know how it goes.
It says right here, right there. Presented by.
What an intro. Wow. Thank you, Coach. Very kind.
I didn't write it. I have to be honest. It's all Jared's.
That was Jared's
writing.
voice. 100%
That was Jared's voice. Just he asked me to host. So, yeah. I tweeted this out, Connor, but it was hilarious. My wife we were having dinner, and she goes, "Who's on the show tonight?" And I said, "Connor from Homefield." And she just
the guy
went,
whose rent
"Oh
we pay."
no!" Yeah, she goes, "Oh no!" And she just got up and left the table, like I'm gonna direct order during the show or something.
It's more liable.
She's canceling credit cards, Coach. That's what she's doing right now.
Yeah, while I'm on the show, she's taking my name out of it. Welcome.
Yeah,
thank
how are
you
doing,
guys.
man?
Doing well, appreciate it. I was just down in Bloomington today and saw Galen walking around, so I feel like I'm just talking to every IU podcaster under the sun today.
We can bring some
That's
others
awesome.
on just to.
Yeah, I had a call with Val today too, so by proxy, she's kind of somewhat an IU content producer via her husband. So it's just a real IU day.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right, well, let's hop into this.
I'm gonna hop out.
Okay, Johnson, Ryan. Okay.
Good to see you, Connor.
Jared, you want to take the lead? You want to take the lead?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
Let me pull
Later,
my music
guys.
up here.
Everybody for watching. Thanks.
I can hit the music and all that stuff if you want. If you just want
to. Yeah, you go ahead and hit the music, and let's do it.
All right, here we go.
This is Verdell Jones. What's better than an epic buzzer beater? The full court dribble and perfectly placed pass to set it all up. And of course celebrating with Hoosier Nation afterwards. So join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Verdell. Welcome back to the assembly call. I am Jared Morris. I'm here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and we have a very special guest here with us for segments 2 and 3. We had more music. Hey, anytime we get more Bob Thompson music, that's a plus. But we're here with our special guest, Connor Hitchcock from Homefield Apparel. We are getting close to our 1,000th episode. I try to schedule it out. I think it's going to happen sometime in January. But no matter how many episodes we do or how many subscribers we get, our biggest claim to fame will always be that we were the first show that Homefield ever sponsored back even before they were Homefield, back when they were Hoosier Proud. So for those of you who may be new to the show that wonder, why do they say Hoosier Proud banner moment? What does that mean? That is a relic of the very first sponsorship that we did with Connor and Hoosier Proud. They sponsored the banner moment. We called it the Hoosier Proud banner moment. It's been in the run sheet like that forever, and we just decided to not change it because it's kind of cool. It's about being proud of your Hoosiers. So we always
retro.
appreciate that. Yeah, it is retro. It is retro. So Connor, thanks for being here, man. It's good to see you and have a chance to talk to you. How you doing?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jared. Appreciate it, Coach. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I was about to say, I remember when it was just the banner moment, and then it became the Hoosier Proud banner moment as
right.
I was printing T-shirts in my Bloomington apartment. And definitely did not have the money for a sponsorship, but found a way to get some money.
We made it work, man.
Yeah, we sure did. We sure did. So, yeah, it's the longest. I mean, it's got to be over 5-6 years now.
Yeah, I think it's 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy. So, yeah, because the Homefield just celebrated its 5th birthday back in August. But obviously, Hoosier Proud, we did on the side. I mean, listeners here know a couple years before Homefield. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Always a first.
So for folks, I mean, obviously, most people who are here listening know Homefield. They've probably purchased from Homefield. Some people, a small portion probably have arguments with their spouses about how much closet space Homefield takes up. But for those who might not know kind of the story and how you got here, can you give us like the Cliff Notes version of, your background and how you kind of got to the place where you are now with Homefield?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was a student at IU, I graduated in 2016. I was studying marketing, just decided one day, don't really remember why, but I'd mocked up some stickers of the state of Indiana, and especially like state themed apparel was kind of early on and being really popular in the early 2010s. And I literally walked door to door in Bloomington. I'd had these stickers made, and some stores in Bloomington picked up the stickers, had made a website for this little side project brand. I thought it was fun, called HoosierProud.com, and just made an Instagram page and had a Twitter, but it is not what the Homefield Twitter is certainly.
It was not a sentient brand at that point.
No, right? Yeah, we were not firing off jokes left and right every day, but a couple of stores in Indy had seen the Instagram account. They bought some stickers too, and I'm from the Indy area, so I'd go home, drop those off, and then they started asking me, hey, we really love the stickers. They're selling well. Do you have any T-shirts? And I lied and said, yeah, of course we have T-shirts. And so that's when I texted my then girlfriend, now wife, Krista, who went to school at Miami of Ohio. And I was like, hey, you're a designer. Can you just help me like mock up a few shirts? She said, yeah, no problem. So she designed a few shirts and sold those to stores across the state. And so at one point when I was a student, 30 or so stores were carrying Hoosier Proud. And I taught myself how to screen print, and I was doing it on a portable tabletop screen print, which if you have ever printed anything, you know how ridiculous that is. I was using my bathtub to wash out the screens, and since it was water-based ink, it would actually cure if I laid them out in the sun or just like laid them out in my apartment. So I would have shirts everywhere in my apartment. We did some experimenting one time with a pocket that was shaped in the state of Indiana, if you remember that. So I would go to Joann Fabrics in Bloomington off the highway and buy a bunch of polyester fabric. I would send it to a die cutter I found in Southport with a laser cutter, and I literally would put it in the dude's mailbox, and he would ship it to me 2 days later with like pockets in the shape of Indiana, and I would sew them on to these shirts. So I was doing all that when I was in college. And then my final year of school, Indiana made the Pinstripe Bowl, which has become a joke and a meme now on the internet. And as we all know, that's right, the kick was good, Megan. What's up? We line up for the field goal to go into triple overtime against Duke. It looks like it's good. It's called no good. Everyone on Indiana Twitter is tongue-in-cheek about it, like pretending to be really upset, but also we're kind of really upset about a meaningless bowl game ending. For context, I've never seen a bowl victory in my life for the Indiana Hoosiers still, so, it would have been nice. And with that, going into the next season, I graduated from IU. I was working in e-commerce at the time, and in Indianapolis, e-commerce marketing. And right, like the day before the 2016 season kicked off, I made a shirt that said horrible design because I designed it, but it said the kick was good. And within an hour, it got picked up. Jared, I'm sure the Assembly Call account was retweeting it because we were sponsored actually of Assembly Call at the time with Hoosier Proud.
Yep.
My neighbor at the time turned out to be Kyle Robbins from the old Crimson Quarry days. And he is Indiana football degenerate, among many other things. He was pushing that out. A bunch of people pushed it out. And we, again, in that first hour, sold more shirts than we had ever sold in the 2 years of this website beforehand. And so I was like, oh, I think, I'm a huge sports fan. I grew up massive, like, IU basketball fan, IU football fan. I mean, AJ Moya was my hero growing up, right? So with all of that, I went to IU, and Jared, you actually helped make the connection with licensing back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I talked with licensing with Val, who at the time ran IU licensing. And I was like, hey, I don't think this requires licensing, but I'd love to get licensed to make IU gear. And again, I'm doing this now out of my basement in Broad Ripple. And Val was like, yeah, sure. Like, you're an alum. And I was like, oh, really? Like, we can get licensed? So from there, we approached Purdue because, it was pretty easy for them to fall in line when we said we have the IU license. And Indiana State and Ball State, because it was Hoosier Proud, right? The side projects focus on Indiana.
Yeah. And
I was texting Krista, who was living in Ohio at the time. I was like, hey, can you help me out with some designs on this? I got a license for these schools. And she said, sure. And tested it for a year or two, and it was doing really well on the side as Hoosier Proud with the collegiate design. Specifically, the vintage take, something different that you're not seeing everywhere. Most brands, they sell primarily bookstore, and it's literally templates. It's school name, drop-in logo every time. And as a huge college sports fan myself, and Krista, her dad played football at Michigan. She grew up going to the Big House every Saturday in the fall. We both love college sports and the aesthetics of college sports. And so, within that year, Krista and I got married. She moved to Indianapolis, and we kind of looked at each other after a year and decided, like, we don't really have much to lose. We're pretty young. We're like 23. Like, we're getting good traction. Let's go for it. And so in August of 2018, Krista and I quit our jobs, and we launched what became Homefield to be a vintage collegiate apparel brand. So we started literally with 8 schools. We added Butler and a few others in the state, UE, I think, and USI, and went for it, which looking back, the process, bad decision, ended up great. But launching with only 8 schools, and I think I underestimated how difficult. Everybody told me how difficult licensing would be, but we had just such strong conviction in our concept, and we were able to prove it out over time just because nobody was doing direct to consumer well at all. And so based off of that and, building really strong community around the brand, which has been massive. I mean, we care about IU more than any other school. That's evident in what we do marketing wise, but we've really tapped into these fan bases that, it matters when you make a shirt that speaks to the experience. Like, we have a 1958 light blue IU shirt for the Dickens boys. Like, nobody's going to know that outside of Indiana. People who aren't IU fans think it's the funniest thing in the world that I have a blue IU shirt that says 5-3-1 on it. Right. But we all know what that season was. So, that's what we hit on, I think, pretty well.
Yeah. Man, and I've started to use it in our ad reads now, actually, which is, one of the things that I love about Homefield and working with you guys, and I think it's one of the reasons why you've been so successful, is there's a real just respect, a current of respect for the traditions of all these colleges and universities. But you can also laugh at the absurdity of college sports, right? Like, that's what your Twitter account does. Like, you've got the jokes, you can point out the absurdity, but underneath it all, it's clear that you love college sports. And I think a fan base comes and they look and they read the description of the items, or they see you talking about them on Twitter, and it's like, okay, these guys are funny, and they'll point out the stuff that we also think is funny, but underneath it all, they actually really respect and love college sports. And I think that's the thing, is sometimes you get people kind of coming into the college sports realm and they're trying to capitalize on it, but they don't get it. And you guys get it. And I think that's just a huge part of why, it's a special thing when it's not just, hey, I'm going to buy a shirt. It's like, I'm part of the home field thing that's happening, and there's a home field thing that's happening, and everybody kind of feels a part of it. And I just think you guys have done such a masterful job of creating that community feel through your marketing and through, the way that you guys just do everything about your business. So, it's why we're so proud to, have you guys as a sponsor, honestly.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, college sports are so intimate, right? And I love pro sports too. I watch a ton of pro sports, but there's just meaning behind, no rational person would dedicate themselves to the Indiana football Hoosiers. Like if you just looking at the history of the program, right? And I love the team, but there's familial ties, regional ties. You just have this experience. It means so much that going back to like your childhood, right? And pro sports, you can get that. I mean, I cried like a baby when the Cubs won the World Series, but it's not the same, right? And so it's what we love about college sports, and what's hard about especially the realignment stuff, right? You kill these weird rivalries and traditions, and these rivalries that are like, oh, well, we pretend we're not your rival, but we really do hate your guts, but we want to be better than you, so we pretend we're not rivals. Or like, there are absurd things like Slippery Rock. They had a rock as a mascot. It was a rock, right? And so they were really cool, and they let us use a version of the old Rock wearing a mink coat on a shirt, and it's one of our best sellers, right? The Tulane Green Wave is a top 10 all-time bestseller. We have every school you can think of under the sun, but it's the absurdities of college sports that just get sanitized out in the pros, right? It's just, there's no risk in the pro sports space, or nothing that makes it unique, quirky, or fun. And so, yeah, it's recognizing like there's some weird stuff out there. That's what makes college sports so much fun. If I cared specifically about the best style, like the highest form of basketball or the highest form of football, I'd go watch the pros. But there's just so much more intertwined in that too. And I will watch the pros because I really am blown away by those athletes. But yeah.
Are you trying to say that the 4 years under Archie Miller were not the highest form of basketball, Connor? Is that what you're asserting here on the show?
Oh man, I do this fun thing where I every 3 weeks during the basketball season last year, I Googled URI 3-point percentage, and I was like, oh, okay. It's not just us. We're not.
All right, so we got a bunch of really good community questions kind of about the business and like your favorite logos and stuff like that. We're going to get to those in segment 3. I want to talk to you about IU football though, because you are a big part of the IU football death cult that that so many of us are. And one of the other stories that is really compelling is the 9 Windiana shirt, which, if I recall correctly, that came out before the season, right? Before the 8-win season. And Indiana actually had a chance to make that one of the greatest called shots of all time in the history of apparel, and unfortunately fell short of that. But
Jared, this is where I revealed to everyone that you ruined it, right?
Oh, God. I forgot about that. Okay, so what was the score of the game when I texted you?
We were up 13 with like 6 minutes to go.
13 with 6. And what did I say exactly? I don't even remember.
I think I'll have to go back on our text.
It was something that was assuming the victory.
Yeah.
It was I think it was congratulating you maybe on the called shot or something like that.
You weren't the only one, which is also hilarious that people were texting me like congratulations, though I had something to do with it. But I had like 5 or 6 texts from people in college football media texting me like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Our DMs were going crazy. One of my favorite things was that we had to refund like 15 shirts that were bought in the fourth quarter because people didn't want to buy it anymore.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Oh yeah, it was really funny. But so
you should have quickly slapped an all sales final sign up there as soon as Indiana got the lead.
Should have learned my lesson. But it was funny. So 2019 was the season. Everybody talks about flash in the pan 2020, which is not true. We all know there was a season before 2020.
Yes.
That was great too. So It started, I believe, in June of 2019. Homefield's not even a year old. And already we've kind of made our name nationally as being like, we had only 30 schools or so on the website at the time, but we had nationally started advertising with a couple national college football podcasts like Shutdown Fullcast.
Yep.
And at the time it was called PAPN. And so they all thought it was hilarious that we cared that much about Indiana football, which again is objectively hilarious to do so when you're from Indiana and you're on Front Street caring more about the football brand.
Yes.
So I love them. I love all IU sports though, but beside the point. So I was out to drinks with the aforementioned Kyle Robbins he was still at Crimson Quarry, the managing editor there, and Chris Schutte, who used to write for Mid-Major Madness and also Crimson Quarry. We all live within like a mile of each other in Broad Ripple. We get beers or going runs all the time. And it was a long evening at multiple locations. And as the night continued on, a couple hours in, Kyle turns to us and says, Indiana's going to win 9 football games this year. And Chris and I were like, come on, dude. Like, come on. And he runs through the schedule. And both of us are kind of like, if this Penix guy is who we think he might be, which, spoiler alert, he was.
He is.
He is. He really is. My friends,
maybe more than we thought he was.
My friends who didn't go to IU really love to tell me that. I'm like, I know.
We're aware.
So we were like,
we blew it. You don't have to rub it in. We know.
Yeah, that Pac-12 interview was brutal this week. But as we're sitting there, Chris and I, whether through Kyle's persuasion or other means, we're like, yeah, I mean, I can see it. And at one point, that's when Chris says 9 Indiana, like 9 wins, 9 Indiana. And we're both like, oh man. And so Kyle tweets that out immediately from the Crimson Quarry account and then like follows up and says like, make the shirt or something at Homefield. So then that's the next morning. And we put the 9 Indiana in the Supreme logo on a white t-shirt, thinking again, like this is a funny bit. And it caught on nationally. And of course, in the IU fan base, a ton of people bought it. And so when Indiana started rattling off wins, we all kind of like, no way. And they got to 7-2 that year after beating Northwestern at night. That's where Penix, I believe, hurt his collarbone or something, like running on a QB sneak up 25. But it was 7-2, and we were like, oh man, this might happen. And so Homefield was very small at the time. There were 4 employees total, myself and Krista included. 3 employees, actually. 3 total employees at the company, where there's now like 40. And so we were like, no way, this is crazy. And I remember on that Saturday of after Black Friday, day after Black Friday, the bucket game, I'm in the warehouse, office then. It was not even a warehouse, printing a t-shirt, watching the bucket game. We barely won. It was a terrifying bucket game. And players are running off the field after the 8th win, yelling into the camera, 9 Indiana, 9 Indiana. I was like, this is wild. Like, they had actually caught on with the team. Players from the team were DMing me for 9 Indiana shirts, which NIL was not a thing then. So I will not, statute limitations, I don't know. But all that to say, Griffin Oaks family bought a lot of the Kick Was Good shirt, by the way. With 9 Indiana, as they should, yeah. But 9 Indiana, 8 wins happen, and IU actually reaches out to us and it's like, hey, do you want to be the official vendor at the Gator Bowl with the whole 9 Indiana deal? And we're like, yeah, like, let's do it. So Chris and I ship a bunch of t-shirts down to Jacksonville. We're selling at the pre-game tailgate. The vendor inside the stadium actually bought the shirts from us and was selling them in the game. And we're just like, IU's up 22 to, I believe it's 22-9. We're going crazy. And it all just like house of cards. And we were like this close to the greatest call shot, right? And it wasn't me. I just made the t-shirt. But I look over at Krista, who grew up a massive Michigan fan with her dad playing football at Michigan, whole family going to Michigan. and I just see like one tear going down her cheek. And I was like, oh no,
jeez.
I'm the worst person in the world from taking her from being a Michigan football fan with the most wins of all time to like shedding tears over my beloved Indiana football Hoosiers. So that's the 9 Indiana story. It was great.
Gosh. Boy, the whole program really got out over its skis a little bit before that bowl game, huh? Gee whiz. I mean, but it was such a cool thing though, because I mean, it was part of the rallying cry of that whole, like you can't tell the story of that season without the whole 9 Indiana thread that went all the way through it, and that's cool. I mean, I think that's just emblematic, like we were talking earlier about, kind of your connection with the programs that you license and that you put their stuff out there. There's an investment there, and obviously the investment is greater with Indiana because of your history with the program.
No doubt.
But God, that game, gee whiz.
Yeah,
oh, well.
I'll never forget it.
No. All right, so let's get some quick Indiana football thoughts here.
Yes.
Heading into this big game Saturday against Louisville, obviously very few people had any hopes heading into the season. Do you take anything away from the Ohio State and Indiana State games that make you feel a little bit better, or are you just waiting to see this Louisville game and see if there's anything there?
For the most part, I'm waiting to see after the Louisville game. I think anything I say will in some degree be me parroting much smarter people than myself. But I mean, checkpoints, right? Defense, hey, looks like there's something. Offense, very confused what we're actually doing because we did two completely opposite strategies. It implemented two completely opposite strategies in 2 weeks. I do agree with the Taven choice. Very happy about that. I think we need to have some ability to throw the football, which is he demonstrated that obviously against Indiana State. But I mean, you have to do it against bad teams and good teams, right? So yeah, I do think the secondary will probably be tested for the first time in this game because Indiana State had no interest in throwing the football, and Ohio State weirdly did not try to throw it to two of the best receivers in the country in the first game. Again, I think the secondary played well in the first game, but they weren't, and with a new quarterback in McCord, they weren't testing us too much. So again, it's two really tough games to judge any season on, and I'm withholding judgment until Louisville because I do think, again, kind of like everybody's saying, it is the first real test. I mean, that Braum is going to know all the buttons to push against this defense. So if it holds up and we can contain a bunch of playmakers in space, even if we lose and it's, a one-score game, I'll feel much better about the season than I did going in because there was so much uncertainty going in, and obviously the trajectory hasn't been great. So, yeah, holding out a lot of judgment until this Louisville game.
Are there any plans for a Michael Penix Heisman Trophy campaign T-shirt as we get closer? I had this idea earlier today of like Penix with like a block eye, to like put a little Indiana in there since he started with us for Heisman.
Well, it's fun. It's funny. There's a store in Seattle we sell a lot of our Washington gear to called Simply Seattle. They made a big Penix Energy shirt last year, but they actually have hooked him up with a ton of Homefield Washington gear.
Really?
And so, yeah, we see him all the time now on social media wearing a bunch of our shirts, but it's Washington, which is really, I mean, what? I think I tweeted from the Homefield account. It was early last year. It was something along the lines of, and here I am reciting my tweets to you, which is awesome. But something along the lines of, like me watching the Washington Huskies quarterback, and it was just the scene from The Dark Knight where it's Christian Bale just nodding at Alfred at the end and Alfred nodding back. Like I'm just so happy for you that you're in a better place and doing well. That's how I feel.
We all are.
Right? Nobody has any animosity toward the guy. I'm so happy he's just doing.
And if they do, they're so completely off base. I don't even pay attention to the opinion.
Yeah, no.
He went to a better place. He's flourishing. We had our chance and we blew it. And obviously, a lot of people saw the interview that he gave. That's probably a topic for another day because that's something to really dive into. Last question for you before we break and then go to the community questions. one of the things that is so cool, and I love seeing it, you guys will post the pictures, is, coaches and celebrities and other people like wearing Homefield and spotting Homefield in the wild. Has that gotten old at all? Or just because it happens so often now? And what was like the last one that really like made you kind of step back and be like, whoa, that is cool?
That's a great question. I think it's funny. I think in the moment it's always still really cool.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there are so many that have happened, and yet here I am trying to jog my memory. I think what was cool, maybe tying into more of a sports moment, was when Kansas State was going on their run.
That's the one I was thinking of.
Jerome Tang, like legitimately, we're in the DMs a good bit. Like he is a great, at least from our exchanges, great guy. Legitimately loves Homefield. A friend of mine who's a good friend of mine who's a college football reporter for Sports Illustrated texted me, and he's like, yeah, they put me on basketball this week, and I just interviewed Tang for half an hour, and I saw he was wearing your hoodie, and I was like, oh, my friend owns the company, and he like went on for 5 minutes about Homefield. So that's always fun because it's not just like, oh, that's a cool shirt. It's they actually have investment and know the brand by name, which is really fun. So Jerome Tang, really enjoyed that. Hoiberg wore a Nebraska ball shirt on a recent trip, and that was kind of fun. Interconference rival there, but it was a good time to see that. I was listening to the K-State discourse earlier before I jumped on. Electric player, again, maybe not 13th in the conference, but electric player. And
be nice to have a guy that can make shots like that.
I would love that.
Yes.
But it is always really fun. Katie Gerald's up at Purdue, actually. Women's coach, really a legendary player. Loves the brand. It's a good time. We've made a shirt with Terry Moore, and she's awesome, right? It's really fun just as a college sports fan to just, seeing people on the sidelines and who know something you created out of your basement. It's really fun.
It is.
Connor,
go ahead, Coach.
I was just going to say, I watch a lot of sports podcasts, and now I'm starting to see hosts that are wearing Homefield. And you just get a big smile knowing that you're our presenting sponsor, and we knew when you got started and all that. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, now I'm listening to this guy. Couple wagering shows that I watch. The guys are in Homefield Apparel, so they've been winning some bets and sending you some money. So it's been nice to see that, and you also see it on crowd shots now too. I'm attuned to finding when you're in the crowd and you're like, oh, that's some of Connor's work right there. That's got to be exciting to see that explode the way it has in the last 5 years.
Oh yeah, Chris and I all the time when we're watching a game, we're like hawks trying to see the crowd, and like I don't know, there's always someone every game, but it's still I don't know, something about it being on TV. You're like, whoa, that's cool. Going to Assembly Hall, Memorial Stadium, we see it all the time.
Oh God, it's everywhere.
Which is
man.
Awesome.
I last time we were in town, I taught a class for Galen over at Franklin Hall, and so after that we were walking through campus on our way to the game, and Galen had his bomber jacket on. And I swear, we must have passed, not even exaggerating, like 8 or 9 people with the bomber jacket. And Galen's wearing it. And it's funny because anytime, he would see someone, it's like there's eye contact and like the knowing head nod. Like, yeah, I see you. It's so funny. It's like this thing, everybody's bonded by their Homefield apparel. And I mean, I've seen people walking around with it in Texas every now and then. It's like, that's Homefield apparel. And they're like, yep. So
it's fun. I'll see it in my neighborhood here in Broad Ripple, and I'll just have to, I don't ever really say. There's one neighbor who I've said things to multiple times. I thought he was a different guy both times, and it's really embarrassing because I never say anything to anyone. And I said to him the second time, he's like, yeah, we've had this conversation before. But other than that, I do see it all the time. It's still surreal to see it on the wild, even though I know how many packages are going out. It's still a really cool experience.
That is awesome. That is awesome. All right, well, we're going to hop into our community questions here. We can skip the formalities of the music and the outros.
Okay.
Let's just jump into it. By the way, if you haven't joined the community yet, you can go to assemblycall.com/community and join us. Things are ramping up here as football season is on and basketball season is coming. But someone who I know has spent quite a deal of money at Homefield Apparel, and proudly, is our buddy Jay Horry, who asks our mediocre question. So we're going to get to the mediocre question next.
It's not that good, but it's not that bad. It's Jay's mediocre question.
And credit to Jay. This is actually a really good question. So I'm excited to hear what you say for this, Connor. Although I think the answer is is clear if people have been paying attention. If Connor could pick one IU athlete throughout history to partner with for a Homefield NIL deal, who would it be and why?
Antoine Randall.
Yep. Okay. Actually, the other part of Jay's question was, and why is it Antoine Randall?
I have sent multiple. He has a website that I'm sure no one has checked for years, and I've sent multiple inquiries into the contact us box just to be like, can we send Randall some t-shirts? I probably should just send it to the Lions facility at this point, but
yeah. Like
Would
what
love
will
to
it take? Do you want $3 from every item we sell? Like Antoine, whatever it takes, man.
whatever it takes. I'll give you every oval item we have. Come on, man. No, Randall. Sure.
Okay, and Jay had a follow-up question. How much does Randall win the Heisman by if Homefield ran his campaign?
It's we would have to. It would be highlights. It'd be just highlight after highlight. It'd be multi-sport angle to it. Winning smile. We're not looking at completion percentage or TDs to INTs. None of that. We're positioning him, Rex Grossman, as the traitor, right? We're doing the whole bit there. And Antoine coming to save Bloomington, right? So I think that's the angle we're taking. I think we do an effective job. But I mean, you let the play speak for itself at the end of the day. Just electric.
You know, one question I've always wondered is, you guys obviously from the very beginning were associated with IU football. Mm-hmm. But college sports, everybody has, there's rivalries and people have strong feelings about schools, good or bad. And Indiana basketball certainly creates strong opinions among people, but Indiana football is kind of harmless. It's like no one else, like outside of Purdue, no one really feels hates Indiana football. They kind of might feel sorry for Indiana football or not think about Indiana football at all, but it's not a divisive university. Do you think that had any impact in so many people just getting into the Homefield brand? Because, being so closely associated with IU football, you don't turn anybody away. And it's I'll adopt Indiana football as a fun second team to follow. Because I felt early on that was kind of part of what built the brand. And it's everybody can grab onto this and no one's offended by Homefield because it's it's Indiana football, man. It's the little engine that could, and they're kind of trying to build this thing up. Did you get that sense, or is that totally off base?
Oh, no doubt. So when we in 2019 doing 9 Indiana, right? I mean, first of all, the fact that you're doing a marketing campaign around a football team getting to 9 wins is pretty funny of itself. But people don't realize that Indiana, we don't get double-digit wins literally ever.
It was Krista wait, 9 wins? That's the minimum that you guys expect,
right? That's yeah, it's Brady Hoke's getting fired, right? So yeah, it is pretty harmless. Beyond that too, though, you have the college football internet that was really pioneered by Spencer Hall, Ryan Nanny, Holly Anderson back in the day, Jason Kirk, and Indiana was a darling of it because of the Wilson Chaos teams, right? That would just scare the daylights out of, we all know, Michigan, Ohio State, for the most part, sometimes Penn State. And so there was already that built in. And then it just being an Indiana brand that's so forward about a program I truly do love, not ironically, but also it's the losingest football program in history, right? I think people, we were coming up at the same time, that trajectory with Indiana football in 19 and then 20, people obviously terrible year, and everybody was looking for something fun to grab onto that brought them joy. And Indiana football, I mean, it was the combination of, the like worst program by losses in FBS history with this coach preaching love each other, right? There was something people grabbed onto that regardless of us, but then I think we helped put a very tiny megaphone to it, right? For people in the college football internet.
Yeah.
Connor, we got a lot of questions, but I'm going to throw one for myself. Your clients, how many of them are sport or team specific and buy everything from a school versus the absolute college wackos like me that has over 85 different shirts? What do you see? I have over 85 Homefield. The other day I showed Homefield to my econ class as a business startup, and then they said, "How much do you buy?" And we went to all my orders, and it's 3 pages worth.
Let's put it this way: our sponsor has made a profit from sponsoring our show.
Exactly. But do you find with all of the awesome logos, it goes into our next question about how do you ensure that you never miss? Like, if you collect college gear, if you are a college fan and collect college gear like I have, the old block sweatshirts and the long sleeve t-shirts and the hats that are down here, do you have a lot of those, or is it usually just people with one major team and a couple offshoot purchases?
We do have a lot of those, and I'm finding, it's not just the people who learned about us earlier. So we have uncovered a segment of people, coach included, who, multiple people have bought over 100 schools from our website, right? There's this one guy, his name's Alex Carsons. He's a Michigan grad, lives in Illinois. We got him in our 5-year anniversary video. We noticed one point in the warehouse team came to me and they're like, "Connor, we think somebody's ordering from every school alphabetically." I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, look at this." And it was like Eastern Michigan and Evansville, then Ferris State, then Florida State. And I was like, "Oh my God, you're right." And we looked at his order history and he was like 5 a week or something like that. We're like, he's doing it. And so, those people are the ones.
Coach has a new hero.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
You can go find Alex Carsons on Twitter. But there are people who just love the aesthetics or love the goofiness of the storytelling. And so now they're the ones who are probably the most vocal on, in particular, Twitter. It'll shock people to know we have other social media platforms too that there's a lot of engagement on. But Twitter is where we made our hay at first. And so you'll see, a bunch of people who will buy, they'll sign up for a subscription and get a shirt a week from a different school. They'll buy the mystery boxes, right? It is still the minority for sure. Most people are like 1 or 2 teams. Like maybe they'll buy IU and Purdue because they have a family member that went there, or, went to one school, but kind of cheer for this other one on the side. But we keep uncovering new ones. Like I was telling a story the other day. I'm teaching a class right now, actually in the media school. That's where I saw Galen today.
Nice.
And I was telling my students about this because we were talking about some brand affinity stuff. But I noticed this guy when we did our subscription for March Madness, where you get 2 shirts every weekend for teams that are still left in the tournament. And boy, did that end up being difficult, because I ended up leaving Indiana women's basketball to the Final Four because I was just so convinced they were going to make it. So I didn't put them into any packages, and then Miami happened. But all that to say, I noticed this guy who ordered 3 of those subscriptions. So he was getting a total of like 18 shirts. I was like, man, why have I not heard of his name before? I swear, like I would have heard of him for somebody who would be this into it. And I noticed his first order was July of 2022, but he had ordered 40 times since then. I was like, oh my gosh. And so his first order was a Youngstown State shirt on the day it dropped. And he lived in Pittsburgh. I was like, oh, he's probably a Youngstown State grad. Second order 2 weeks later is when Penn State dropped. I was like, I bet he went to Youngstown. Cheers for Penn State for FBS. Third order 2 weeks later was the Tulane Green Wave. I was like, oh, I got you. Like, it's over. And sure enough, it's just like Hawaii, slippery rock. Like, you get going and going, right? And so it's fun for me because those people are coming in all the time and we're uncovering them. But you're not alone, Coach. There are thousands of people who order from.
I won't start a
handful of
support
schools.
group,
Yeah.
to stop this thing, but
Yeah. Oh man, it's good.
Megan
stuff.
in the chat said, "Oh dear, someone warn Amy." Which
Yeah. Sorry.
my
Amy.
students told me to color code. I have now color coded all of my Homefield
closet?
shirts in the closet by color, per my students' orders. So it's quite the picture.
I'm glad. Yeah,
But it's
that's
just
what
good stuff.
Carson
And
says, too.
I've always collected college gear. And then when Homefield started, it was a niche of that retro and my age living through a lot of those logos that it hits for people. Some people buy their favorite NFL or NBA or hats or sneakers. But I just wondered how much of a niche there is for the psycho collegiate orders like me.
Yeah.
No, I'm not the only one.
You're not the only one. It's a minority, but it's a strong minority for sure.
Okay, from Troy. Can you ask Connor what sort of sorcery he uses to ensure that Homefield never misses?
Great
Which
question.
is a great meme online. Homefield never misses.
That's why we did the can't miss kickoff a couple of weeks ago for our college football campaign. One of the things is I'm not involved in the design, which always ensures that it never misses. I've designed a couple of the shirts, and some of them still have done well, but I'm not involved in that. The team just does an incredible amount of research. We have 4 apparel designers under the direction of Krista, and I mean, they are just so talented in their own right. Not all of them came in massive college sports fans. We had a few that were, but they have learned how to just do research like no one's business in terms of the stories. We have a great copywriter too, who's done an excellent job of telling those stories on every product page. But I mean, I'll go by the desk of the designers and somebody's always got some YouTube clip up of like Pitt versus Syracuse football in 1973 or something like that. Right. Like they are experiencing it. And, they'll read, not just like look for cool logos, but they'll read books or just articles, newspaper clippings, just try to understand the feeling or experience or how something was used. Right. So it's a lot of care, right? We don't just throw a logo on something. It has to have meaning. And there's so many buried little phrases or, tiny, like if you look at any national championship that happens with like an Orange Bowl, there's always an orange somewhere on there, like just like the fruit, right? Like just stuff like that people may not notice until later. That's small and buried, but every detail the designers really stress over. And so there's a lot of work that goes into it, and we just have really awesome, just such incredibly talented designers too, who care, which is the differentiator, really.
All right, I got the next one from Bob Thompson because you got to be careful how you answer this with Jared here. But Bob asked, what is your all-time favorite IU uniform or logo? I guess we could throw in there too.
Any sport.
Just all-time favorite IU uniform.
We all know the answer I have to say because of whatever. I'll just get the oval part out of the way. Non-oval division.
Okay, do you like the oval? Like you genuinely like it, or do you like it ironically? I'm not here to be argumentative. I'm very curious because some people do like it kind of ironically, but they don't really like it.
No, it's
Jared. He's our sponsor. Remember that he's our sponsor.
It's objectively.
Connor and I have talked about this many times.
It's objectively ugly, but I love it. That's the best answer. And it's kind of, there's some irony in it too, right? But for me, it's like, look, I was born in,
that was your wheelhouse IU football.
Yeah,
teams.
I was born in the 90s, right? Like that's it's when I first fell in love with Indiana football, and that's burned in my brain. But
people who were as connected to the Mallory era as I was have bad feelings about it because it came right after Mallory and always great
absolutely,
with Cam Cameron and all that. So there's a whole lot of stuff mixed up into it. So I get it.
Oh, absolutely. I have kind of different divisions for like favorite uniform, favorite logo, because it doesn't quite align. My favorite uniform set are the ones that they revived this year when the men's team was hot. With the curved trident. I mean, the typeface arched Indiana looks so good. Thank God the piping was brought back. We all were very happy when that decision was made, just even for the standard uniforms currently. But just a little taller, skinnier Indiana on the front with the curved trident. That's my personal favorite uniform set for the school, regardless of sport. I would say my favorite logo is still the drop shadow trident. That is my favorite of all of them. I bet if you pull the fan base, I would bet the curved trident is probably that comes out number one. My favorite, I'm a sucker for a drop shadow. I think the contrasting white and black in particular is really nice. And I think, its heyday really was late 80s there. And there's some ways we can't use it in our apparel. Like you can't put anything over the IU, but there's some really cool old versions where there's a seal over it, or you had like a banner going across the front. It's funny the way I've actually talked to Value Licensing about this before. They interchanged the use of so many tridents at once. It was kind of crazy. You didn't know what was the primary logo. But I think of, Mallory being carried off the field, and that's on his left chest on the starter jacket, right? I love that aesthetic. So, I'm kind of all over the board. One of the funnier logos I think that exists in IU history, because they didn't have it all together brand guideline wise in the late 90s, of course, with the oval, which Cam Cameron brought in, but we have one of our designers donated to the office a Lend Your Leg to Yeagley's Army poster, and it has the oval logo with 5 stars over it, which is
really
yeah. I'm gonna have to tweet. I'll have to tweet out a photo of it to you guys later. But I was just telling IU about it today. I was like, it'd be a real shame if you let your maybe favorite e-com apparel brand use that logo. So,
see, okay, there's something about that sounds immediately more awesome to me than associating with the football program. I'm now intrigued by the oval for the soccer
because
team.
When the football team wore it, it was 5 total wins, and that was 5 national championships for the other football team.
Yes.
Yeah. Probably.
So to follow up on that, Connor, Jeff asked, which university outside of IU has your favorite retro design or logo? Or maybe a couple of them, as you got hundreds of different schools. But is there a favorite or two?
People ask me that all the time, and I feel like I have a different answer depending on the day. So Tulane is always up there for me. It's really hard to beat those colors, and you have a couple of different retro logos with the retro wave, but you also have Greeny, we actually have one of the shirts coming out with him this week, the little guy. I really love Kansas State's uniform set and what they work with, because they have the purple and the lavender. It's less about the logos in that case and more the colors. LSU, again, you get the colors there, but there's some really cool Tigers in LSU history that, I stole a couple of those purple shirts. It's man, yeah, I have a whole stack of shirts that I just steal for myself. It's really all over. Pitt, frankly, I think they made one of the best marketing branding decisions they could have possibly made when they went back to the royal blue and gold and they brought back the Pitt script as their primary. I'm sure if you asked me tomorrow, I'd have a different answer. Right? Like UCLA is always up there because how can you not with those colors and the script and Joe Bruin and all? It's just, yeah. I could I could make a case for almost every single school depending on the day. Almost.
There's something about the script logos I've always liked. UCLA, like the Michigan State, the Kansas State. There's something about that look I've always loved.
Yeah, it's really classic. And, there are some scripts that are bad that are out there. But, honestly, most of them are really clean, especially if you know what you're doing and what contrasting colors to put with it. You can make a lot of those scripts look great. So I love them.
Megan has a question. She wants to know if Homefield is hiring because she cannot afford to keep buying all this stuff without a second job.
Megan, you gotta Megan, here's what you create new emails, one a week, and you use code HOME, and you generate usages.
Home 2-3
for-
now. Home 2-3.
It's home 2. That's right. Yeah, we did
Yeah.
change it. Yeah. Because what happens is they end up getting caught in Retail Me Not or other websites, and then there's not proper attribution. Fun marketing stuff for you all. Use code HOME23. I think Galen still says home on his podcast.
I just texted him yesterday. Actually, I was like, it's home 2-3. We got to change it.
Come on, Galen.
Yeah.
No, but that's what you got to do, Megan. You just got to make new emails every week if you're really dedicated to it, and you'll get your discount.
Yeah, you buy some more businesses, like,
Yeah.
let's go. Megan, you do what you got to do to get the home field that you need.
Correct.
That's how it works.
Mm-hmm. We are actually, we just received word 2 days ago. We had a meeting with a company that runs in venue. We're targeting for homecoming, but / Hoosier Stereo, but we will be in Assembly Hall and Memorial Stadium now. You'll be able to buy home field in both.
Nice.
So very excited about that.
That is awesome.
The promo code won't work there, but
That's true. That is true. All right, a couple more questions to wrap up, and then we'll get you out of here, Connor. And thanks again for coming and hanging.
Absolutely.
And by the way, this was not like part of the sponsorship. This was we just wanted to
No.
talk to Connor and catch up,
Yeah.
because it's been a while. It's been a while since we've talked, so we figured let's just talk in front of everybody, because when you have a podcast, that's the best way to do it. Let me see. Okay, so Tom, and I don't know if you have insight into this. Tom says, how can we get some of the apparel that the coaching staff wears? And this is a constant issue with Indiana of seeing awesome apparel on the players and coaches, everybody running to get it, and then the big letdown when it's like, oh, yeah, there's like, in terms of like the new modern stuff, there's just not that many options. So other than, hey, go retro and go to home field, which is, of course, what we direct everybody to do you have any insight on that, on how to get some of that stuff, or why that doesn't happen, or if there's maybe going to be a change as far as that goes?
I've not heard anything on the latter. I know what you're asking, but it's not. I will tell you, it's not an IU exclusive problem. This is across every single athletic department, whether or not you feel like your on-field provider cares or not. It typically what happens is you have to order. I mean, I don't work for an on-field provider, but I know people who do. And so just talking to them, you have to order these things from a company like Adidas or Nike, like 18 months in advance. It's crazy because they're producing millions and millions and millions of apparel pieces every year. And so they have other jobs, not only for other schools, but pro leagues and elsewhere. They have not found a quick solution, quick turn solution where like a mobile brand like myself, Purdue can find a new 14 to 16 seed to lose to in the tournament, and we can crank out a collection the next day. I just picked one out of thin air. I wasn't, playing to the audience here. So, right. But they produce at such scale. And I mean, even with COVID, they delivered 18 months of product and one shipment to bookstores because you get so backed up. There's so many logistical nightmares with it. So in my belief, I do think the sideline providers need to do a better job of having some quick turn solution. We see it all the time. Even we'll time up a drop of a shirt with a football program wearing a new uniform out to the field they haven't worn before. And there's kind of two pieces there. One, in no world should home field be able to do that. Like the sideline provider should be doing that, right? Because they're already making the jersey and the uniform, but they don't. Frankly, it's small business for them, right? You'd say like, we all buy it like crazy. If you bought 1,000 of a quarters that the coaching staff was wearing, what does $100,000 mean to Nike or Adidas? Like, it's a drop in the bucket. It's unfortunate that that's the way the decisions are made, right? But then also, even when we try to coordinate, this year we've had to move. We're going to drop a shirt with a football program when their uniform comes out. Not Big Ten, you guys, whatever. But we've had to move it 3 times of when we drop the shirt because they keep telling us, oh, XYZ apparel provider pushed the date back. Jerseys got delayed. And they've been planning this for 18 months, right? So it is an issue for sure. And that isn't like, don't worry. It's not that Adidas doesn't care about you guys. It's that this is, or us, right? It's a it's a problem that I think the sideline providers need to work on having a quick return solution domestically, frankly.
Yeah.
And there's your operations talk of the day.
No, but that's good. I think that's good insight, for everybody to have. From Phil, I think this is an interesting question. He said, does Homefield have any way to measure the success of sponsorship of the leading podcast for IU sports? But
yes,
but as a more general way, like how do you measure the success, and how do you choose, who you're going to partner with?
Yeah.
Because obviously you guys have limited time and resources to do that. How do you choose that, and then how do you measure whether it's working for you? And especially one like ours that's been going on forever, in terms of the sponsorship. How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, in terms of choice, we're really tapped in on Twitter. So we have their private lists because we don't want to give the playbook away. But we have a list for over 150 different fan bases. If we want to know what's going on in Rice Owls Twitter, I can jump in to the 6 accounts that we have on this list and figure out what people are talking about, right? And we know 2 or 3 podcasts for basically every G5, not every G5, every P5 has about 2 or 3 podcasts of note for the most part. And every G5 probably has, or mid-major and on a basketball podcast, has probably one podcast that talks about them. And so when we're selecting which ones, it's important to us. We're a quality product, right? If we are advertising on a poor product, what does that say about our tastes, right? So we'll listen to every single, we'll search XYZ School podcast, and we know it from Twitter. And frankly, we're really selective about our partners in terms of we want to make sure, that we aren't going to be embarrassed by working with them. So we have, it's unfortunate in today's day and age, but we have a list of words that we will search from the podcast account, and we'll go cherry pick different episodes that a couple members of our team will listen to and be like, okay, is it good? And are they going to embarrass us by like saying something terrible? Because again, unfortunately, it's kind of what you have to look out for. And so, I was.
So what you're saying is we're lucky that you just haven't listened to an episode with Ryan on it.
You just beat me to it. I was going to say, and you still sponsor us even though we have Ryan.
I was listening in the car on the way home from the office to the whole XJ discourse. So who knows? No, it's so I mean, with you guys, I was a listener before I ever sponsored the show, right? That was easy. I knew that, right? And we measure success in a couple of ways. I mean, you can look at direct, at first, especially when you're starting out, you have very little money. Like, I mean, again, we were out of my basement. We had no money to start with. You look at, I put X amount of dollars in, and I know to be break even, I need Y back. So typically it was podcast code usages, right? However, I know at this point, 6 years running, our podcast code is a first time use code. And I understand that a lot of your listeners we've acquired those customers. I think it's bad business and not how you build lifelong relationships to say, oh, you know what? We got our use there. We acquired all the customers there are to acquire. We're out. We understand that someone listening to all the post-game shows and AC radio by having Homefield ads in their ear that are genuine from people who actually like the product, which is a huge piece for us, that sure, maybe for a couple months, we don't see the podcast code usage there, but we know come holiday, we know exactly where all those IU fans are going to go get all their holiday gifts. And we know for brand permanence, which we need to do a better job of measuring brand lift. But I mean, for us right now, it's kind of the first 5 years of Homefield have been making good bets and then observing just the overall impact of those bets on the brand. So, could I get really into the weeds and be like, man, how's this Houston podcast performing? No doubt. Sure. If there are no code usages, it's probably dead for us. But really we look overall like, okay, we spent X amount on podcasts and for Y amount of podcasts, and then we saw Z amount of lift total. Right. So that's how we observe it for the most part.
Nice. Very nice. Well, we cherish our relationship with you guys. We love working with you. Hope to continue, and Coach will continue. He's going to have to get another credit card that Amy doesn't know about, but he'll do what it takes to continue buying shirts.
You got to get him like an assembly call card, Jared. Come on.
Yeah,
That's what I should hold out for my next contract. Every month I get a free Homefield shirt as payment, right? I think that's
Ryan wants to be paid by the interruption. Coach wants to be paid in Homefield gear. So
I think that's fair.
That's what I do. Also, great line by Brad. He says that's why Ryan left, because he was ordered to.
No, but it's we appreciate Connor. I do too, teaching econ to seniors and talking about going into business and the different options that people have. It's a great story to teach people. It's a great story to share, and maybe I'm just justifying my purchases when I say how great you are personally to talk to us and sponsor our podcast. But a lot of thanks. Again, I got the nice Script Indiana long sleeve going tonight. It's just been a pleasure to be here for 5 years and see your growth and appreciate your involvement with us. So kudos.
Yeah, no, appreciate all the support over all the years, guys. I know you guys have been there from the very beginning. You've been awesome partners to work with. And so, here's to 5+ more. Excited for it.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll get you out of here on this. We asked you about the football team earlier. Get your thoughts on basketball. How are you feeling about the upcoming season? Are you confident, intrigued, worried? Like, how would you kind of assess your feelings as we head into year 3 of Mike Woodson?
Yeah. I've got a lot of thoughts. Still fleshing some out. For the men's team, I think, and for both teams, frankly, it all comes down to shooting, in my opinion. You got to put the ball in the hoop more than the other team and score more points, right? But
so it's all about shooting.
That's right. It's very funny I'm sure it's been said before, for a state where everybody is, taught to shoot the basketball with perfect form, that
on their hoop attached to a barn.
That's right. Just like Ryan Klein when he grew up in Carmel. Like I did. So I'm not throwing shade there. I grew up there too. I can say it. That both teams have struggled mightily. Well, Garzone is changing that, but both teams have struggled mightily from 3. And so, look, I think there is a path. You come back around the XJ discourse, and on the men's side, I think 2 years ago in Woodson's first year, he treated the regular season like Woodson did. And I think this is great. Like a lot of NBA coaches treat the regular season. You watch an NBA team, they'll spend 5 or 10 games trying out different pick and roll coverage, or they'll just be testing something on offense, and they might be willing to lose a couple games because down the stretch, figure out what works. And then in the NBA, you spam it until it's not working anymore. And
it's a great term.
At the end of Woodson's first year, he, after a whole season, in my estimation, it's like, yep, the XJ and Trace pick and roll, I love the 2 best players on the court, and we are going to run that high pick and roll until someone stops it. And flying across the country, 4 games in 7 days, blah, 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 blah. We all know the spiel. That maybe stopped it. Also, St. Mary's is just a good team. But I do believe there is a version of XJ even without the shooting, where Khalil Ware has the year that I think a lot of us are hoping for. It's a perfect pick and roll partner. You've got another creator in Mbako. You've got, depending on how Cups comes along coming off the bench, right? How Trey continues to develop, 46% probably isn't going to happen again as volume increases. I hope volume increases, right? So it is just, how effective. To me, it comes down to, like, I don't want to reduce it to how effective is that high pick and roll. There's plenty of other factors, including, can there be enough development on elbow and corner threes or wing and corner threes that open up the floor, that, it kind of feeds itself, where there's clears the high pick and roll open more. People have to sink in more to stop that high pick and roll, and there's more. We get it, right? So I trust Woodson on the defensive end. I trust him to get guys to gel, even if the pieces don't make sense. He's coached, one sort of way in the NBA with rangy, athletic wings who could shoot better than what our current team is, but he had adapted to having back to the basket dominant big man. So I trust he'll get the pieces together. I trust the floor is high simply because it's Mike Woodson. And I think the ceiling, the talent is there. We all know that. It's just a matter of how do the pieces fit and is their 3-point shooting. On speaking of incredibly high floors, I think the same for Terry Morin too. I have there was like one game where I was like, what are they doing? The Ohio State Big Ten tournament game. Other than that, every time I just trusted like, oh, they'll come back. And I think Mac was hurt in the Miami game. I think we all knew that.
Yes.
And I think that Miami was shooting lights out uncharacteristically. And, that was a bummer the way it ended. But even with Grace gone, that's all rookie team Grace Berger gone.
That's right.
I still, winning the conference this year, who knows? Clark is back, but she's missing a lot of pieces too. Michigan looks like they're pretty good. But yeah, basketball overall, I'm just excited. Like, it's just so much fun now to have two programs that are, I can reasonably expect every year to be in the tournament and be competitive, right? It doubles the amount of basketball I get to watch every week, like fun basketball, right?
That's right.
And I can't remember the last time that we had two teams humming like this at the same time.
Women's basketball just hasn't done much.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? And then as they started to pick up, the aforementioned Archie era was underway. So we haven't had two of the same. It just makes November through February and March, frankly, so much fun, right? So yeah. I'm excited for it. The men's team's a mystery to me in how it will play out, but I do think there is a high floor just because of who they have at head coach.
Yeah. You know what I love about that answer is I asked you the question about the men's team and you worked the women's team in, as you should.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great answer.
They're amazing.
They are amazing. They are amazing. And they should be talked about on par with the men's team. So
yeah, and great. Mac is also Mackenzie literally has a Homefield influencer code. How could I not be talking about Mackenzie Holmes here? She's great.
I've got I have a shipment coming actually from Homefield, and one of the items is the Mackenzie Holmes shirt.
You know what, Jared? I was in the warehouse the other day because we've just been overrun recently, and I scanned your order in. I meant to text you. I was like, "Oh, really? Jared ordered a Mackenzie Holmes shirt." Yeah,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, I was gonna go. So Grace and the Fever were in town, and I was gonna go to the game. And so I was going to go to the game because we were going to meet up beforehand. I didn't end up getting to go. But I ordered the shirt because I was going to wear a Mackenzie Holmes shirt there to go see Grace. So, but it didn't happen. But I'll wear it next year when she's in town.
We had our inventory manager, Matt, he and three of his buddies went to a Fever game recently, and they were all wearing our Grace shirt. And Holly Rowe came up to them and took a video and put it on her Twitter or whatever. Was interviewing them, which was fun. But yeah, no, people, I talked to the Pacers team shop because we're doing some special in-venue stuff with them for the All-Star game this year. And they were saying, I was like, how's the Grace stuff doing? They're like, you wouldn't believe it, man. You're way better, on par with Aaliyah Boston stuff. It was just awesome.
She's legitimately one of the most beloved basketball players, men or women, that's ever played at Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the amount of respect and love people have for her because of how she played and just who she is. Mm-hmm. And now that she's going to go on and have a successful pro career in Indiana, it's just perfect, man. It's
really cool.
I'm so happy for her.
Yeah, I was really happy. She got a lot more playing time near the end of the year. They started as a Fever. It was obvious they were not going to make the playoffs. They started to play the rookies more, and she was getting 15 minutes a game. She was doing great. So
yeah. Well, Connor, thanks, man. Great talking to you. Obviously, we'll be letting people know every week what you guys have coming. You're always releasing new stuff and pushing the envelope, and so pay attention to what they're doing. And we just appreciate you, man.
Yeah,
keep up the great work.
You guys too. Thank you, guys. Yeah. We love it.
All right, Connor. The great, where's my applause button here? The great Connor Hitchcock from Homefield Apparel. Great having you here with us, man. All right, Coach, how's Andy feeling about this Eagles-Vikings game? Because I do not know what
He's
the score
pretty.
is.
He's pretty happy. They're
Is he happy?
up
Okay.
13 right now, getting the fourth quarter.
Okay, well, very nice. Very nice. All righty. Well, let's wrap things up here. That will do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, you can join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. As always, we thank Bob Thompson for producing our music. We thank John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logos, and we thank you for listening. We'll be back next week or whenever there's an emergency podcast to keep talking IU basketball with you. Until then.
Take it from me, Roman Langford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Here I come. This is Don Sony.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff.
That was fun.
Thanks, man. That was awesome.
Yeah. Appreciate it, guys.
Awesome. Glad we could do it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got I'm trying to think what IU stuff. We have a new IU bomber jacket coming out, but I wasn't ready to say that yet. So
Well, we are still live, by the way.
Shoot.
Yeah.
We've got a new IU bomber jacket coming out at some point. Everyone.
AC After Dark. See, you got to stay here till the end to get the scoops, to know what's happening.
All the home field scoops. Well,
you know, back when you guys first launched, back when the bomber jacket first came out, I bought 6 of them because I wanted to do like some giveaways, and I still haven't done the giveaways. Or wait, was it the no? I didn't buy 6 of them, but I have a bunch of the joggers. I've got pennants. I've been stockpiling them because we're eventually going to do like an email campaign and use them as giveaways. Okay. So I might do that with the new jackets when they come out too. I like to buy a few extra of those to have them because they inevitably sell out, and so it's nice to have a few on hand for giveaways.
It was the first time was really brutal. Like people having it in their cart and then not being able to check out, which like sounds like, oh, fun, you're selling out, but people were not happy about that. No. And we ordered a lot. I mean, it's just we ordered a lot. But
there's a part of the exclusivity that's good, and it gets people there at at 10 o'clock to click on it. But it sucks to disappoint people.
Yeah, we ride that line, and people get a little nasty, but it's fine.
And someone who hasn't done inventory management probably can't properly empathize with what you guys are going through trying to figure that out. So
it is the hardest, thing we've ever done. We underwent more inside information for everyone. Underwent a NetSuite integration that took 9 months, and it was just the most mind-numbing process. I wasn't even like hands-on. That's the one I was like, I'm out. I can't. This is not my specialty. And we have plenty of really talented ops people who handled that. But inventory management's terrible. You think it's easy to just like, we brought 100 in, we sold 9 of them, so we have 91 left. It's just not. That's just not how it works at all.
All right, man. Well, have a great night, Coach. Good to see you, everybody. Have fun. Keep your, stay patient with all the recruiting stuff. We'll get answers soon enough. Everything still sounds pretty good, so there's no reason to worry about anything. Hopefully, we have some good news coming soon. But
absolutely. All right, thanks, guys.
Talk to you guys all next week.
See you.
See you, Connor.